and welcome to another episode of the Market Pulse presented by SmartTouch. I'm your host, Aaron Fichera, and today we have an outstanding episode where we're going to dive into the crazy and wonderful world of CRMs with our founder and CEO, Robert Coas. Robert, welcome to the show.
Hey, Aaron, thank you for having me. Congratulations on your most recent awards and recognition for this great show this great podcast that really puts out in front of our peers, right, the latest and greatest around all things related to PropTech and real estate. Thank you and congratulations.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for joining us today, because in that same vein of PropTech, we're going to kind of talk about CRMs, which is what we consider one of the most underutilized PropTech and tech in the sales kit of today's new home sales and master plan communities. And Robert, have entrenched yourself in the life of the CRM, and this is the fourth iteration. So before we kind of go into tactics and what sales managers should be looking at and metrics and how should you be utilizing the CRM, how did you come about in this world? How did Robert Coas wake up one day and say, I'm going to build the best CRM for home builders and master plan communities?
Some people would say that's a challenging question. I would say that's really easy because my background is as a person and a human being, I'm a fisherman. I love to fish. So just starting out with the principle that if you're a fisherman and you want to be efficient, how can you go fishing without a fish finder? Right? Sometimes the fish finder is in the brain, and otherwise the fish finder is technology, right? That tells you. And just like that analogy, right? The fish finder CRM for buyers is what we offer. And so that is called NextGen, the fish finder CRM to help find buyers. And so that fundamentally is a principle, something you got to have on top of your craft.
Well, to that point, a lot of people, when we talk about CRMs, they're familiar with kind of the big out of the box, just cumbersome machines like HubSpot and Salesforce. In your experience, we've talked about the CRM being underutilized by sales teams. Why do you feel initially the current CRM setups either fail or just being underutilized?
The most common problem is that it wasn't customized for the organization. Somebody went in and did some filtering, some evaluation, and for that individual, it checked all the boxes. But then when it came to onboarding and implementation, it didn't match the way that the organization goes about handling incoming leads, walk-in leads, the follow-up, the qualification system, the language that is utilized in that organization, right? That is critical and pivotal. And when that is missed, which typically is 9 out of 10 times when you go to an off-the-shelf mainstream solution, then the probabilities of it being a successful endeavor are very slim. The other component of it is embracement by the leadership and the organization, right? You can't call yourself a professional sales executive if you're not proficient at using the tools that a professional sales executive uses. And the number one in the toolbox is your CRM, right? Like, shoot, forget about a notebook, forget about sticky cards, forget about a spreadsheet. That's back in the days of the Flintstones, right? So it starts with that. It starts with leadership and making it part of the job description, the participation, the recording, of all of the interactions, notes in an app to remind yourself of the next opportunity that you have to sell that buyer. How simple of a craft or task is that? And believe it or not, today we are still experiencing in this industry, the new home sales industry, about 40 to 50% participation. And so the solution to that is two-part: ease of use, setting it up in the implementation so it's very easy for someone to navigate and understand how to add a buyer, how to update a buyer, how to find a buyer, how to add a realtor, how to update the life cycle. Simple tasks. And part two is gonna be the really the embracement from leadership in making it a requirement in the job description for your sales executives to have to participate. It's not optional, right? Like, are you going to use Outlook? Is that optional in most organizations? You can't send an email if it doesn't come from Outlook. So why is this different,
Mhm.
right? So I believe that today in 2025, about to turn to 2026, we are still experiencing that challenge. But guess what? Our company and our endeavor to be a leader in offering a solution for new home sales and residential home developers to be able to facilitate the uh, recording of information in a CRM that's easy to use and design for how you operate your business.
Well, I think you touched really well on those two buckets of that phased in approach of implementation and then adoption. And kind of taking the first phase of implementation. Let's say, like you said, a sales manager, a builder, they're working off spreadsheets, they're working off sales cards, they're about to go into the endeavor of looking into a CRM. What would you recommend? How would you go about implementing a CRM, or what are some mistakes that they would have to be mindful of as they go into either adopting or implementing a new CRM or shifting from, let's say, HubSpot that's out of the box? It clicks a few boxes, but it's not, geared towards what they need it to do.
Um, Really, we're talking about onboarding and what are the onboarding requirements, and they're quite simple, folks. It's talking about wherever you have your data, we grab that data. And the most commonly known format for the data is CSV, aka Excel. And depending on how old the data is and how many emails you have, you may want to consider running that through a verification process. We utilize a third party called NeverBounce. And let's just say you've been in operations for 10 years and you've collected 7,000 emails over 10 years. You know, all those people aren't in the marketplace. Some of them may even not be with us. And therefore, we need to validate those emails and then set up a criteria for distribution amongst your salespeople. And you tag that in the file. That's one component. The second component is going to be like, do you have campaigns? Do you have drips? Do you have templates? And as part of that, you capture that, you program it into the CRM, and you begin to design the workflows that are going to distribute those communications. And, if you got to categorize them, some are going to be drips, automated emails. Some of them are going to be just one-time auto reply, confirmation email, also known. And then you're going to have your templates for your sales and marketers that are going to be repurposed. That's another deal. And then you are if you're advanced, you're going to have some kind of website visit tracking, and that piece of code would go with the tag manager. And with that, then you have what we call a configuration doc, which has all the custom fields, all of the drop down alternatives, lead scoring, and different types of criteria and attributes that you have in a CRM that you get to decide and customize to the language that you use in your organization. And with that, that's all you really need to customize and configure. And the advantage that we have over our peers in the marketplace is the fact that we just work with builders and developers, and we've been doing it for the last 15 years. So we speak the language, we're efficient at the execution, and not just that, but we also bring added value to the table with our best practices. I think that one of the things that makes working with SmartTouch NexGen extraordinary is the fact that we are also have integrated into our company an award-winning ad agency that has accountability for performance and utilizes the CRM to its utmost potential across over 12 agency of record clients. And therefore, that knowledge base is shared amongst all our clients that independently manage their marketing on their own.
Well, I think that kind of gets the analogy of teach a man to fish. You know, we have those experts. And well, and to that point, as we kind of shift that paradigm to, let's say in the perfect world, we implemented it, we got this going. What does it take for adoption? We've heard from builders, there's always that kind of hiccups in getting people to onboard or to write down their information. Sometimes, you have a star salesperson that still writes on cards and you don't want to disrupt that flow. What would you recommend to these sales managers and these leaders that are looking to get that full holistic adoption from their organization?
I think it's like anything else in life. The fear of failure, right? Like if you're not managing your opportunities in an organized way that uses technology to make sure that not one lead that has value to purchase one of your own gets away because they're not all ready to buy today. And so acknowledgement of the benefit, and that just leaks into the participation of the organization as this being a part of the job description. If you have a sales organization today in the year 2025 with AI technology emerging upon us, and you are not holding your salespeople accountable for recording all of their activities in a CRM designed for them, it's the key, then you have no business managing sales. I'll be that brutal about it.
Oh,
Right? It's like us, like we're an agency, part of our business is an agency, and saying that we're still drawing stuff on paper and that we're not going to use the creative suite in design
yeah.
and, and Photoshop and all that's Illustrator.
Right.
That's how like archaic that
Yeah. You're
tech.
basically about to start to run a race and you just chop off your leg before it starts.
So I mean, it's that, man. I mean, and what we're trying to do to disrupt, we just invested the last 2 years. We went back to the kitchen, back to the drawing board, and we re-engineered. We listened to some of our clients, and we just updated our user interface to put attention to the things that are important. When am I up? When am I down? Who's hot? Who's not? Where do I spend my time? What is successful? What is not? And we use the user experience to highlight that in our new NextGen, which really like will bring all the features to the table that you could possibly need. But at the end of the day, it's got to be easy to use, right? That was the exclamation point. Easy to use. And the second answer to your question is management has to make it mandatory. There's no excuses today whatsoever, right?
Yep.
Like,
Yeah.
hey, if you weren't online in 2020, 2000, right?
Mhm.
Eh, there's absolutely no excuses, right? I remember still hearing in 2010, 11 that there were some on-site sales guys that the host would enter the traffic cards for them because the guy didn't know how to turn on a computer. Well, that dude at that time in 2010 was 70. So they're all retired. The people that are selling homes today are able, and the willing has to come from management and the top down. And then the welcome carpet comes from the solution being customized to the way and the language that they speak in the organization. And to me, those are the keys, two keys of successful CRM adoption.
Well, and to that, as we kind of go into our next section around tactics and saying, okay, well, we got to have these conversations. You got the sales manager and the sales agent. Those are the two that are predominantly jumping in there and looking at the whatever CRM, whatever tools you're using. If you're a sales manager, what are the first things you pull up the CRM? What are the first things you're going to be looking at, and how do those spur the conversations and direct the sales manager or the sales agents? If you were in those shoes, what would you direct them to do?
I I, I believe that you know we all live on reporting and summaries, right? Like the reporting and summary. The reporting should be a summary of the activities over a period of time, and it should also be able to yield the conclusion of the results. And in this business, the ones that matter to us are leads, appointments, and sales, aka leads, tours, sales, right?
Hmm.
And so, if I was a sales manager, I start looking with the end in mind. Can you publish a report that's meaningful and will allow me to measure the number of activities, the most important KPIs, leads, tours, and sales that my team did over a period of time, and ultimately be able to conclude based on most, typically sales, right? Because you would have multiple columns to filter: sales, leads, tours, users on the website. But we would just go ahead and filter it by sales, right? And so that to me is like starting that evaluation. And then, can this system yield a traffic report? Can they yield by source? Because you failed to mention earlier that, yeah, it's sales and a sales manager, but there's typically a marketing manager involved too. And a
True.
marketing manager, and there could be online sales also involved in this in many cases. And they are key stakeholders. And they are key influencers in the marketing channels that are being invested in. And therefore, like, it's not just important to understand like how many new people we got and how many of those showed up at the point of sale and how many of those transacted, but also where did they originate from? So we can, in the marketing department, be able to stimulate that and make wise strategic decisions with that data as well. So, i.e., critical and important, the marriage between sales and marketing occurs in the CRM if it's fully integrated.
Well, and to that, you know, you have so much data that you can make decisions around with there and whoever's the stakeholder. And if we kind of go down the line to the sales agent, one common problem that we hear is just the inability to prioritize, inability to understand, you know, who's ready to buy. Like you were saying earlier, you know, hey, I got a lead in there, but that's one that needs to be nurtured. That, you know, what's that cycle? So if you're kind of going down the line and I'm a sales agent and I'm now got this high profile, you know, this high powered fish finder in front of me, how do I use it? How do I prioritize?
Well, there's multiple ways, right? But we solve that problem. We have a solution. Um, Very commonly known across sales and marketing professionals, lead scoring. And the concept of lead scoring consists of you have physical lead scoring interactions, such as recording a note, setting and completing an appointment, changing a life cycle, sending and communicating with an email. And then you have like system generated, what we call smart touches. Those are interactions with campaigns, text messages, forms, coming back to the website. And those interactions are dynamic. Collectively, they create a score, which like is the check and balance for what we attribute as the life cycle stage of a buyer, which is somewhat, in some cases, depending on how you set up your attributes, it could be subjective based on the salesperson's evaluation. But the lead score is never subjective, right? It is black and white. You go to visit our floor plan page and you get 10 points. You spend more than 3 minutes on there, you get 20. You generate an appointment, you get 10. You complete an appointment, you get 10 more. That is black and white. Whereas I could evaluate Aaron Fichera as a prospective home buyer. And if I had to evaluate him and I have a life cycle categorization of ABC, A meaning the hottest, B middle, C the worst, and I can just arbitrarily pick. But the lead scoring creates the operational efficiency to generate a list who has the higher lead score based on a date range. And I personally happen to use that myself. In our operation, in our business development efforts, when things get slow, I look specifically. And not always just slow, but before I even call anybody, who's on our website, who's active, and the hot wits is the remedy for that.
And so what you're saying you're looking for is that type of recent engagement. That's going to be your low hanging fruit. Those that are interacting with the website, those are going to the floor plan. I mean, it's pretty obvious. No one's showing up to the on site if they're not ready to buy or heavily interested. Are there any other engagements that you feel are kind of okay? These are really good buying signals. These are things that sales agents should be paying attention to.
I always advise, right? Because as a client or a user, you have a choice. How deep do you want to go in your lead scoring of your website and those attributes. And if I'm in a home builder's shoes, I go real deep because I can recall my own experiences in which I was playing with floor plans. I was customizing and dreaming about how we would be living in this floor plan and what I would do to modify. When I spent 5, 6 minutes and then I saved it, you can tell that that individual means business. You're not going to invest all that time if you don't mean business. Maybe you're a dreamer, maybe you can afford it, but you mean business. And so those types of activities are the most recent activities. And in our system, we allow our users to filter. And I always advocate, I want to see the last 7 days. Heck, maybe even the last 3 days, depending on the volume of traffic that you have. But those would be some of the best practices as to how to organize your priorities in getting back to prospecting when you have a big list. And NextGen solves that with leads for you.
Well, I know kind of that new and improved lead scoring and automation has been added, and that's, right now you just released a new UI and interface, and this is, I believe, the fourth iteration in a series. And then we're, in tech, you're always building the next version, you're always going. So what brought about this new iteration? What brought about the new next gen? And what does it solve?
Well, the number one problem that we all have, right? I talked about we still have 50% adoption. It's 2025. So adoption is number one. Ease of use is the problem that we're trying to conquer, and make it easy. And we all thought that an app would solve the problem. And we're gonna be very transparent here with our audience here, but most people still use the laptop. 95% of our users are on that laptop. It's easier, it's bigger, it's just a bigger screen, really, the reality. And so, today it's just getting over the hump with adoption. And I just strongly encourage our sales leaders not to take any exceptions anymore. I've heard exceptions for the last 25 years of my career. I've been involved in this for 25 years with the same concept, leads and CRM. 25 years. And here we go, fast forward the tape, and we're still addressing the same problem, adoption. And it's very insane to think about how can you possibly be a professional salesperson and not have a toolbox. And the number one tool in the toolbox is the Fish Finder CRM, the Fish Finder for buyers.
No, couldn't agree more, Robert. And I know as we're kind of wrapping up today's segment, uh, and you talked about advice and you talked about the adoption being the biggest hurdle that sales managers need to focus on. But I always like to end with, kind of additional advice that you would give to sales leaders and teams. And this being around, what do you feel is the most single important daily habit inside the CRM that will lead to long-term success?
Log in. Just
Yeah.
damn log in. And we put our dashboard where the KPIs for you as the user, if you're a single individual, or for a market, a division, a community, or the whole organization. Log in. Take a look at the scoreboard, right? Number one. That tells you the big picture, right? And to me, that's just an easy first step.
Yeah. Who's taking the action? I love it. Robert, as always, I appreciate you dropping knowledge bombs on all of us. I can't wait to see the next feature sets that are coming out.
Yeah, there's a lot of hype about AI and its integration with CRM. So we are in the R&D lab at SmartTouch at the moment, thinking about our next smarter touch
All right.
or next gen.
I love to hear it. I love to hear it. Well, more to come. So, again, Robert, appreciate you taking the time. And for those that are listening, thank you and have a great day.